Hey folks, and welcome to a very special IoT Live session. Today I've got Jesus Barranco. I need to roll my tongue a little bit more. And we've got Seeam Islam. These are both folks from the IoT program group, and we're going to drill into some interesting topics today. So did you want to introduce yourself and just say a tiny little bit about what it is that you're doing at Microsoft?
Sure, I can get started. Hi, Peter. Thank you for having us today. I am Jesus Barranco. I am a product manager in the Azure IoT team. Been here for about 5-6 years, and very happy to be talking about what we are building in the team and to show the folks how they can use these technologies.
Brilliant, good stuff.
Cool. You go next. I'm Seeam. I'm a product manager here on the Azure IoT platform. I currently lead the product strategy for device identity and device security across the Azure IoT stack. Thanks for having us, Peter.
I'm excited about this. This is, the studio is awesome, by the way, so really excited to be here. This is part of Microsoft MVP Summit we're filming here, so Jesus and Seeam very kindly have agreed to come and be part of this session. So, if you know me, I'm a huge IoT geek, and I spend a lot of my own personal time geeking out. Is that something that you pair will share? Do you geek out about IoT yourself? Is that part of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Microsoft roughly 3-4 years ago, and I've been within the IoT space for quite some time. Previously focused more on Android-based devices and Android-based software experiences. And then now today, I find a lot of joy in tinkering around with the different Azure IoT services out there, building demos, custom solutions, and really putting myself in the shoes of everyday developers and users that use these platforms to really understand what they're looking for in solutions like this.
What were you doing in the Android space?
Yep, so I worked on a couple different products with the Android space. Most notably, I worked on the Microsoft Phone Link app. So it's like that cool Windows PC app that lets you sync your Android device to your Windows PC so you can sync things like notifications and messages. I also worked on a Microsoft Android distribution that launched on Teams meeting room devices over the last couple of years. So that was a super cool experience.
Nice. That was the original IoT device now, of course, is the biggest one that everyone is carrying. Love it. So what about you, Jesus?
Yeah, so being here for a long time. I have been for almost 20 years in Microsoft. Yeah, it started with a Windows XP. I don't know if folks might remember that version of Windows by now.
Yeah, still winning in most of the, like you walk into the airport terminals, it's probably all XP still.
That's where I started, being a tester for that product. Okay. Then I moved to consulting at various technologies like SharePoint, Bstock, which I don't think Bstock exists anymore. But if you look at those technologies, we're already messaging pipelines, right? Then I moved to Windows back again as a Windows product manager into the Windows mobile space, Windows application development for mobile applications, for Windows Phone. Before that, actually, I was on maybe one of the very first also IoT devices that existed, which are set-top boxes. Nice. We used to have a Microsoft TV product that was used to sell, all these TV guides and all these things for the cable TVs. Mm-hmm. So I was part of that product team at the beginning. Then I moved to Windows. And then 5 years ago, I just started in Azure IoT.
I like it. That flows into what you were doing because a lot of those boxes are run Android.
Exactly. I started that Phone Link. I was a heavy user for that one. Yeah.
I like that. So, if anybody's watching this and have played with IoT, it becomes part of your life rather than part of your job. And then those of us that are really lucky go and do it as part of our jobs, which is amazing. But we spend our evenings tinkering with IoT, and then we come and we do that at work as well, but for a professional client, perhaps. Is that something that both of you can attest to? Do you tinker with IoT outside of work? And how does that work with your day job?
Yep. So a lot of the tinkering I do with IoT is directly related to my day job, actually. So testing out new preview bits that we're shipping eventually to customers, getting our engineering and product teams that early feedback to ensure that we're really building solutions that satisfy the needs of our end users and platform users.
So you said that you were working during your earlier time in the Android group there, and then you moved across to IoT. Was there other stuff rather than, obviously, IoT for me is brilliant because it's a convergence between the physical world, the stuff in sensors and stuff that we can touch, and then the online, the cloud-based stuff where all the data lives. Is that something that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what resonates with me most about IoT is that it's really the foundation to eventually enable physical AI. So when you think about traditional AI models, they really rely on like static historical data sets. So really like kind of like a snapshot of like information at a moment of time, and then it reasons based on that. But when it comes to physical AI systems, it's reasoning on top of data that's continuously changing. Because after all, IoT devices, they're constantly capturing signals about the physical world, whether that be through like camera streams or like sensor input. And physical AI systems rely on this like multimodal type input in order to actually understand what's going on in the environment around it. And then it can actually reason upon that. And so we see scenarios where industries can use physical AI for scenarios such as like identifying anomalies within the processes within a manufacturing plant, or even like identifying like predictive maintenance or something. Like finding those bugs, anomalies ahead of time based on existing trends that these AI models are actually able to discover. So that's really what really drove me to IoT, is that I see it as being the foundation for enabling physical AI within these spaces.
I like it. I got a feeling that later on we're going to start thinking about how we can use AI with IoT. Maybe we'll see. I like it.
I think I correlate to that answer. Basically, the line between personal things to do and personal jobs and then job in the work is very blurry at this stage, which is good. But yeah, I do think I have my pet projects at home and also for work. Some of them I hope that might become at some time something in our products. So basically, something that I have not allocated time for in the professional time. I just tinker with that. I play with it and have my own playground. If things work, then that concept might bring it back to the team to see if they like it, that concept, if we want to invest as Microsoft on that. That's something that I do. And other things I play at home with IoT. I mean, in my home, everything is IoT. From the sprinklers to the smart lights, everything is IoT. I cannot live with anything that is not IoT. And as such, I do have some dumb devices that are not smart enough, but I still want to use them, right, as smart devices. So one of my pet projects that I have right now ongoing, it has been for a while, I just need to have the time to pick it up more, is to convert these 3 heaters that I have for my garage, which are very dumb, but they have remote controls. So to have a ESP32, just having my IoT device and having an infrared signal, so I can make them smart enough. It's working so far so good. I can just send the right code, I can turn them on, turn them down, refine the temperature. The only challenge is that I don't have any feedback. So I don't know if it's actually worked, right, the command.
Okay.
So I just need to send the command 5, 6, 7 times until I am sure that it turned out at the same time. So that is good. Actually, that's working fine for me, just to play with the technology.
Yeah. Well, if you know Cliff Aegis, then the comment I'm about to make might trigger him. But obviously, you could use temperature and humidity to find out if they're actually working.
That's a good point. Yeah, I need to make sure that which sensor I put there to just give feedback back to the back end, and that's it. Yeah. For now, I just have them scheduled like, hey, 5 a.m., turn them on, because my garage is my place to work, my home office. So I want that at 8 a.m. there is warm enough. So that's where that's how I solved that issue.
I like it. Yeah, I saw a talk where somebody had got an old mechanical thermostat, but they didn't want to invest in a new thermostat. So they actually put a servo on the front of it, and they were moving this old mechanical thermostat. It sounds quite similar to
that's similar,
what
yeah.
you're doing.
But I took advantage of the infrared.
Perfect. I like it. So you mentioned earlier that you tinker, and then and both of you are tinkering with the tech that you're playing with at home is the stuff you're building in your day job. What does your day job look like? Because I'm assuming you're not working on the same products, because that IoT stack is quite broad. Do you want to speak a little bit about what it is you're working on as part of your day job? Do you want to start, Jesus?
Sure. Yeah. So basically what I do is I lead, or I am contribute to the strategy of IoT in general for all these services, how all these services work together. IoT Hub, DPS. Now we are going to see how we integrate to the Azure Device Registry as well, Azure Device Update. So I look at all these services, and I look at them from a very specific angle, which is from the customer perspective. So I always tell Seeam and my older colleagues, I am the customer voice. So I will come to them and complain and say, hey, we are not doing this right, and we need to improve here, here, and there. So I look at that from the customer perspective, the partner perspective, the MVP's perspective, so to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing will satisfy or will solve the real pain points from our customers. That's basically my job. I look at it from that angle, and I provide feedback. Of course, I look at how we are going to integrate these products and what is the strategy look like, and go to customers and talk to them like, hey, this is what you're thinking on doing. Does that resonate? So resolving what you are trying to solve. So
that must be interesting, because you're directly talking to the people that are using these products, and then to be able to drive that strategy based off real life feedback. That's going to be a very interesting position to be in, to have that deep technical knowledge, but also get that direct feedback from the folks that are using it, and then drive the strategy based on that. It's quite a
exactly.
That's a great
And
position to be in.
prioritize also. That's the interesting piece, because we would like to. I mean, now that we are here with everybody, we would like to do everything that we know that we have technical depth, and we want to address all of that. We need to prioritize that. So yeah, that's why we need to talk to many of you to understand what is most important, how we are going to have better impact, and then we just prioritize those features.
So what about you, Sam? What is it that you're working on at the IoT Group?
Yep. So my team and I, we recently shipped a new certificate management service that launched at Microsoft Ignite late last year. This actually came as a big feature request from a lot of our awesome key IoT customers. So I worked very closely with Jesus here, who was able to triage and funnel that type of feedback. And then we were able to assess kind of these customer needs that a lot of these IoT operators had in the space, and actually address them with the solution.
That's cool. It's good to hear that you're both customer focused as well. We deal with customers, so I work at Avanade, in case folks don't know at the moment. It's interesting to hear some of the, and I don't know what the correct word is, but the kind of reticence to use what some of these customers are calling, and I'm stressing that the customers are calling them legacy services almost. So I'd call these the long-standing, existing original services of IoT Hub and DPS and those sorts of services that have been around for a long time. Some folks are worried that because we see newer services like IoT operations and the connections to Fabric and out that way, we see from the customers that they're worried that perhaps these services are not being focused on by Microsoft anymore. Is that what you see internally? Do you hear that? But more so, what's the real story underneath the hub here? Because from what I see, there's lots of development happening.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we don't see that internally. That's first off. We do see that externally, that impression, and I want to take advantage of these questions to clarify that. Basically, these services are very well maintained, alive, and they remain core part of our strategy in the Azure IoT team. So the only difference is that we launched some products 10 years ago or maybe more, and some others we just recently launched, like Azure IoT Operations, like you mentioned. But there is definitely interest and appetite and a huge effort to evolve these services in a way that solve problems issues. I mean, as I said, and we have been saying, customer focused, we are customer oriented and customer obsessed. So we want to make sure that all the products that we build will be satisfying a job to be done or a problem from the customer. So these two solutions, let me call it that way, are parts of the same strategy, are two different sides of the same coin, which is the Azure IoT strategy. Let me share one example, because I think always sharing one example is always better to see, hey, if I am a company that, let's say, I do agriculture, and my work is to produce fruits and veggies, right? And at the end, I want to produce a bunch of products. I have different product lines with all these fruits and veggies. And if you want to, yeah, there you go. So let's say that you want to have this, with these fruit and veggies, you want to produce jams and, I don't know, juices and different product lines, okay? Within that ecosystem, and that's my company, and that's what I care about. Within that, I will have multiple devices doing different things. For example, if I look at the fields, I might have thousands of acres in different states or different cities. For example, look at Washington and Oregon. And I want to have a bunch of devices in the fields, in the crops, just to measuring my moisture level, my salinity. I need to know when I am going to water all these fields and whatnot, and what I need to put in those fields. All of those devices, it's impossible to manage. They won't be on a local network. So I want to connect them just over the cloud, over the internet, using mobile broadband, and I want to operate them from anywhere. And I don't want to send any technician to deploy these devices, because I am not going to send my IT department to all these fields, right? I just want these devices to turn on and work. So for that purpose, I will use DPS for zero-touch provisioning, IoT Hub for sending much of communications, Azure Device Update for updating the devices to ensure that they have the latest firmware, and all of that can be automated automatically. Then I can measure all the salinity, all the moisture of my fields. My fields are maintained without ever having to stop food in the fields, unless if I really need to deploy new devices and whatnot. Now the harvest time comes. I pick up all these fruits and veggies. Now let's come back to the place where I produce the final thing, how do you call this, the refinery or the facility where I produce my juices, jams, and all of that. I have a bunch of robots over there, which are just tracking all the fruits, are just managing, hey, I have video cameras, video feeds to tell me which fruits are working nice, which fruits are basically rot and needs to be pulled out from the production line. For those scenarios, you don't want to wait to, hey, do I have internet connectivity? Can I make that decision on the cloud? No, I can't. I want to make that decision right away.
Yeah.
So for that, you want to have low latency, bunch of power. That's where Azure IoT Operations plays a huge role. You can coordinate all these robots, orchestrate all these AI workloads on the edge, and basically facilitate all your production line. Then you end up having your final product. You have your uses, your jams. Let's just put them in a trailer and send them to the final retail store. You want to measure and you want to monitor that trailer and the path. Where is it going? You want to ensure that the trailer is spending the right enough battery, the battery life, the gas life, the temperature internally in the truck. All of that, we are back to IoT Hub and DPS because that trailer will be connected to IoT Hub using mobile broadband and sending all the data. So as you can see, it's an end-to-end. It's not one or the other. They are not fight. These are just multiple services that are part of the same strategy. And we want our customers to see them as a single solution and use the right technology for the right problem to be tackled.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're not going to deploy a host of industrial machines sitting in the middle of the field to be able to go collect data like that. You're going to use smaller devices, ESP32 level devices with, as you've said, LTE or something like that, or maybe even LoRaWAN and a gateway. And then that's just like a hose pipe that's just going to go through IoT Hub and then to the rest of the cloud. And then in the more controlled environment, then you can do a level of processing or AI at the edge. And it's interesting when we start talking about that I see the indecision in people at the moment because it's that particular area I see as being an overlap. Certainly the edge processing stuff where we'd have traditionally, if you like, IoT edge-based devices sitting there. But now there's a choice to be made between either those sort of, relatively low power in a way, edge devices and something like Azure IoT Operations. How does that kind of speaks to exactly the point that we're getting to here in those traditional services and then the option to go for the newer services? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So IoT Edge remains to be, and we know customers remain to use that, and remains to be a good choice and a better choice for different scenarios because they don't have enough power to run Azure IoT Operations and things like that. So if that is the case, we are still committed to the services. We are very well committed. We are investing in those. We are launching security updates. We are making sure that LTS 1.5, we know that is about to expire. We are working on those things. So yeah, you will see investments there in that area. And if IoT Edge is the right solution for the problem you are trying to tackle, please use it. Yep. And let us know the feedback, why you couldn't use Azure IoT Operations, because we want to also ensure that we build the right technology.
Yep. So. And we'll come back to this as well, but certainly directionality, there's some parts of IoT Edge, for instance, extended offline, which works really well for something like shipping, where they know they're going to be offline for long periods of time and then come back to port, that IoT Operations just doesn't support necessarily. So It is interesting. It's definitely choosing the right tool for the right job. And it could be that you've got an investment in IoT Edge, and the whole point here being that investment isn't wasted in any way, shape or form, that it's a fully supported way to go, and it's just choosing the correct direction based on your requirements. Obviously, something like IoT Operations or at least the machine you're using with that will give you options for perhaps AI-heavy workloads at the edge as well, where perhaps a lower spec IoT edge-based device wouldn't have enough power to do it the modern way, at least. So it's interesting when you start seeing those stories.
And we want to hear about those. Like what is the difference? Why you couldn't use one or the other? What is better for you to choose one or the other? We want to hear all of that. Yep. So we are going to share our emails at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we really want to hear those type of things. Again, we are customer obsessed. We are obsessive about hearing what is working well and what is not working that well.
Exactly. So, but what I do hear from both of you is that there's investment in those, and we are not calling these legacy services. So I'm going to be really clear that I hear this from my customers, and I push back in that, yes, they're traditional almost because they've been around for a good number of years, but they are moving in a direction. And you mentioned earlier that Ignite earlier last year, or later last year, there was some announcements of a host of new features out of IoT Hub in that space. Did you want to speak a little bit to that, Seeam, and where we're going and what we've seen that's been released into preview?
Yeah, absolutely. So to set the record straight, we're continuing to invest into our existing Azure IoT services like Azure IoT Hub, device provisioning services.
Yeah, let's go with existing. I like that word.
And we released a ton of new features over at Microsoft Ignite last year. So some of the features that we released at Microsoft Ignite. So every device that connects to Azure IoT Hub now today with these new services are also projected as ARM resources using the Azure Device Registry. So previous to Microsoft Ignite, any asset that was connecting up to AIO would be represented in the Azure Device Registry as a typical ARM resource. But now any Azure IoT Hub device as well also gets projected in ADR as an ARM resource. This opens the door to so many different management capabilities that are extended to Azure resources, such as RBAC, tagging, and whatnot. On top of that, we also introduced a new first-party certificate management service, which essentially allows you to configure and deploy a cloud PKI within your IoT environment. And I have another slide after this to dive deeper into that new certificate management service, because it's really cool what we've been able to ship within IoT Hub.
I like it. Certificate management is hard generally. Security in IoT is, people will lay jokes about, the S is missing out of IoT generally, but I think part of that is because it's difficult, and we see large organizations have a security function and they're able to handle that. It's perhaps known that smaller organizations will not focus as well on IoT, and certainly I've seen some feedback and some shocking examples of people doing things like embedding master keys directly into the way they provision devices and things like that. Bringing security more front and center and perhaps making that story more accessible for folks is always going to be a good idea, and I'm hoping that that's what we're starting to see with what you're showing here. So did you want to speak a little bit more to cert management?
Yeah, absolutely. So our new certificate management solution really solves a big customer pain. So the IoT landscape is always changing, and cyber threats are becoming more and more mature as time goes on. That said, the industry is aware that X509 certificates are the gold standard when it comes to IoT security. The issue is that managing a PKI, so the entire infrastructure that manages X509 certificates, that's super technically complex to get started, and it's also expensive to continue to run. On top of that, if you have a PKI, you need to then meaningfully integrate it within your IoT workflow. So everything from how certificates provision onto your devices, how you renew certificates, or how you address, for example, a compromise that might happen within your IoT environment, right? And so our new certificate management service really aims to streamline and simplify that process. So here's essentially how it works, is that now that your IoT hubs are linked to your ADR namespaces, you now use your ADR to completely manage your devices as well as your certificates. So within your ADR namespace, you can enable your own unique root certificate authority. So this is essentially the topmost CA or certificate authority within your PKI. And all of your underlying CAs will chain up to this. And because this is unique, it means no two ADR namespaces will share the same root CA, nor will two customers share the same root CA. It's completely scoped to that specific ADR namespace. So it provides that cryptographic security boundary between your namespaces and other namespaces.
Is that would that be a concern from people in that once you start hosting this in the portal that you lose that level of autonomy and control? Is that what you're talking about there, where it's scoped specifically? Is that the question you're answering?
Yeah, so we see ADR namespaces as essentially a way to build a boundary around like a certain fleet of devices or around a certain fleet of IoT hubs. Yeah. And by making this boundary, by mapping the root CA to the security boundary, you're able to ensure that only this subset of devices chain up ultimately to this root CA to ensure that the scale of your root CA is not getting too large, that you're really scoping it down to a certain subset of resources or devices that you'd like to.
And that gives you the ability to then invalidate down that route.
Exactly. You don't want to validate Contoso if Contoso a fabricant, if only Contoso was compromised, for example. Yeah. So that gives you also that separation between companies and ensuring that it's my root CA, only for me and only for this purpose.
Exactly. And it doesn't just end there. So chained to your root CA, you can also create multiple different policies, which is essentially a management construct for issuing CAs. So issuing CAs are the type of CAs that actually create, sign, and issue leaf certificates that devices will then use, save, and then present those to IoT Hub to actually authenticate with, right? And the awesome part is every CA that you create within your ADR namespace is actually backed cryptographically by a hardware-based key that's stored in the Azure Managed HSM service, right? So you get that cryptographic hardware-backed security module to actually store your CA keys and whatnot. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and what we're talking about here is the ability for you to be able to offload some of that complexity to Microsoft, who are going to be well trusted in that space. So how does that look for sort of, obviously I mentioned that it's difficult for small companies, but larger companies are going to be very ownership centric here, is that security is really important. So how does that journey look like?
Yep. So the certificate management solution really appeals to all sizes of customers, from small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses. The reason being that this solution scales, and it also integrates directly with existing services like device provisioning service. So what this means is that if you have like 1 million devices, 5 million devices, or even if you're a smaller company with, let's say, like 100 or 1,000 devices, you're able to scale your PKI based on how many devices actually need these leaf certificates to connect to IoT Hub. So this certificate management service, it really scales based on like the side of workload that you're kind of working with.
Interesting. You're not going to have an answer to this question, and I'm probably a bit naughty for asking, but it's in preview. So things that are in preview don't often have a cost associated with them. Is that something we could talk about? Are we allowed to sort of give an idea about T-shirt sizing, this sort of thing? Because security is expensive, rightly so, should be, because it's important. Can we get a directionality on that? When will we find out if you can't tell me?
That is a good question. We cannot tell yet.
I didn't, by the way, I didn't rehearse that question with them, so I just put them on the spot for you lot.
No, and it's a good question. That is the most asked question that we get actually when we talk to customers after the public preview.
Yeah.
Every single time is, how much will it cost me? I mean, before anything, Jesus, how much will I pay for this?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We acknowledge that we have to do some finalization of the price. There will be a price that I can say. There will be an extra price. Yeah. How much and how it will look like, the business model, we still don't know.
Okay.
We will know soon enough. Before we GA, definitely, we will let everybody know and build their own models to know, hey, is it worth it? Should I compare this against other solutions? If I am having my own PKI right now for this, then I can compare the price of maintaining this PKI and the price of moving to this solution.
Interesting.
So we will have it.
Very politician-friendly answer that.
Definitely.
I'm assuming you'll try and tier this in a way that, we've mentioned this before around the smaller companies. If it's going to be aimed at enterprise customers and the cost is an enterprise grade costing, then it's going to price out folks. And I think we should be concentrating on those small people, because the amount of security that they don't put into their products, we should be giving them that way. So I'm hoping, and I'll twist your arm, that we get some form of pricing that will allow folks to have an entry level in there and not block them out. So
I think to partially answer that question is, we know that these certificates won't be general purpose certificates.
Yeah.
These certificates will be used for connecting to IoT Hub and for the communication to IoT Hub.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we will be conscious on the.
Yeah. I mean, the tiers and scales in IoT Hub aren't exclusionary. There are levels in there that you can go and tinker, and it won't cost you a thing within reason. And then you can go and deploy, and you can have tens of millions of devices connected, and then you're looking at a completely different solution. So that's good to hear. And again, this is customer centric and you're customer focused. So kind of hoping that we're speaking to that whole point as well. So with all of this, and you're talking about these new services, is there anything you can show us in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we'd love to walk you through a technical demo where we'll actually deploy an IoT device using kind of these new capabilities that we're introducing in public preview today. And then, we'll give you a quick look.
Exciting. I do like a demo. Yeah. And it's taken us a while to get here to the demo, because often we'll try and front load some of those, but I think it was really important for us to try and scene set what we're doing here, where we're going directionally, and you'll hear from more of the conversation in a minute about where this takes us as well. So,
Cool. So here I have my Azure resource group containing 4 different Azure resources right now. So I'll touch on each of them. So first, starting right here, this item, this is my Azure Device Registry namespace, or my ADR namespace. This is essentially the management layer for all of these devices that connect to IoT Hub, as well as my certificate authorities and my actual certificates, right? So this is where I'm going to go to configure and manage those resources. Second, I have my Azure IoT Hub. So this is the endpoint essentially that my devices are going to be, sending telemetry to, syncing device twin properties, etc. And my IoT Hub now actually links directly with my ADR namespace. And I can link multiple IoT Hubs to one ADR namespace. So all of those devices I can manage and see within one namespace, depending on my preference.
That's pretty powerful to be able to connect more than one IoT Hub. So you've got a level of segregation and separation there, but you've got a more connected view of all of your devices, rather than having to dive in perhaps the device registry of each of those. And you're showing 2, but I'm assuming you can have way more than 2 in here under that same namespace. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. You can have more than 2 right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yep. So thirdly, we have a device provisioning service resource. So we use device provisioning service to provision any devices that want to get connected to this namespace. So DPS will provision the device to the IoT Hub, as well as register it within ADR. In addition, we've made some changes to DPS where now in your typical registration call that your device makes to DPS, it can actually send certificate signing requests, which is essentially the device saying, hey, here's my private key that's signing this request. Can I please be issued a Leaf certificate to this device so I can use that to then authenticate with IoT Hub moving forward. And lastly, we have a user-assigned managed identity, which is essentially us giving this identity the right privileges so that these 3 resources can actually talk to each other, share resources, share devices, etc. So it can all work together.
Okay.
So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to open my Azure Device Registry namespace. I'm going to scroll down here to credential policies. As I mentioned before, a policy is essentially a way to manage your issuing CAs. So the CAs that will actually issue Leaf certificates to my devices. At this point, this namespace already has its own unique root CA. And so I'm going to create a policy, which is an issuing CA. And I'm going to name this policy like Contoso Demo Policy, something like that. And I can actually configure this based on the security needs of my organization. So let's say I want my device certificates to last no longer than 30 days. So I'm going to set the validity period to 30 days. I'm going to hit next, and then I'm going to create this policy. And so what this is doing, it's creating an issuing CA in my PKI, which then I can use to issue Leaf certificates to my actual devices. So let's give this maybe a couple seconds to create that Azure resource.
And this the PKI that we're talking about here now is Microsoft owned essentially, and you're then deploying a credential policy within that Microsoft owned PKI, whereas traditionally you would be the owner of that whole PKI and you'd have to do this issuance and validity yourself and manage that, and then the reissuance of certificates or the realigning of the dates, make sure that things don't fall off the end. And but this is going to give you the ability to be able to do that here.
Yep, exactly.
I like that directly in the portal.
Yep, so your PKI never is really exposed as an Azure resource. Instead, when you create a namespace, we create a PKI on that behalf. Right. And the benefit here is that you don't have to manage another Azure resource now. ADR becomes that plane for you to actually interface with your PKI directly and create these entities that you need to create.
What's the downside with that? What would stop you from doing that? What's the level of control you'd have with your own PKI that you wouldn't have with this? Somebody's going to come to me and say, I do X, can you do that? Is there parts of this that you're still working on? Yeah,
so what Jesus mentioned before is that these CAs and these certificates can only be used for devices to authenticate with IoT Hub. So you can't really take the certificate to go and use in like another scenario that's not IoT Hub. We don't support that because we want this PKI to be scoped specifically to this ADR namespace to create that security boundary.
Yeah. So
but now I want to interject a little bit. If customers and if folks watching have scenarios where they want to see this PKI going, we would like to hear about those.
Okay.
Like if they want that certificate to be used for more than IoT Hub, if they want us to expose more control on what this PKI can do for them through ADR namespace, we want to hear that feedback.
I like it. I hope that this
Not promising anything, but I want to hear.
Yeah, and I hope this is coming through in that if you get one thing from this session is that Jesus and Seeam absolutely want you to come to them, and we'll give the details at the end to be able to give your feedback, the directionality that we can take with the product and see that in reality later on. So yeah, it's good. Carry on.
So going back to the demo, my policy resource has just been created, meaning I now have an issuing CA within my PKI. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the sync all button. What this essentially does is that it takes the CA certificate of the issuing CA that I just created and it syncs that with all of my IoT hubs that have been linked to my ADR namespace.
Okay.
And the benefit here is that now any device that attempts to connect to IoT Hub using a Leaf certificate, IoT Hub, because it's been synced with the CA certificate, it's able to verify and validate those Leaf certificates that those devices are actually presenting. And so now I'm going to go back to my resource group and I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to my device provisioning service. I'm going to open up my enrollment group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link my enrollment group to my actual policy. And so now in my device provisions via device provisioning service, we're going to know which policy or which issuing CA should be issuing the certificates on for that device.
I like it.
I'm going to hit save.
Cool. So you can have different policies with different
enrollment groups.
Okay, exactly, that's pretty cool. So
And so
Or
now
you can share, right, as well, across different enrollment groups. You can have the same policy.
you can,
that
yeah.
you'd like to.
You can, yeah. So now let's go back to my IoT Hub. Let's go to my list of certificates. So that certificate that I just synced for my issuing CA is now saved within my IoT Hub. So now IoT Hub can recognize and validate certificates that chain up to this certificate authority.
That was super quick.
was
All
super
that thing
quick,
just
yeah.
syncs straight across.
Yep,
like
exactly. So now let's get an IoT device set up. Cool. So what we have here is a wind turbine IoT simulator. So this creates a simulated device, which is essentially a turbine. And then this device is going to try connecting to Azure IoT services using Device Provisioning Service, IoT Hub, and Azure Device Registry. So here, my IoT device is configured with my appropriate DPS ID scope, so it knows which DPS to actually contact. I have my device name right here, so Turbine Contoso Demo 001. And then I'm also going to add a certificate signing request. So this is the device. It's a request that's signed by the device's private key, telling the service, hey, once you validate who I actually am using my onboarding credential, please issue me a certificate that chains up to the appropriate policy that's part of this enrollment group. And then I also have my enrollment group key, which is going to help decide which enrollment group this device actually is provisioned to. Since this is a demo, we left the enrollment group key here, but that's obviously not like
that'll be removed in a minute.
Yeah, you obviously don't do that. It's just for a demo. And so now we're going to start this demo. And so what's happening here is that, so first the device is attempting to connect to DPS using its onboarding credential, which is a SAS key. And so it sent the certificate signing request to DPS right over here. And so DPS is validating my onboarding credential. And then let me hit pause and then go through this. So DPS successfully assigned my device to the appropriate IoT hub. So Contoso Demo IoT Hub 03 right here, right? And then once it's been added to a hub and to an ADR, it's issued a leaf certificate. So my leaf certificate is valid for 30 days from March to April, because that's what I configured within my issuing policy, right? And then on top of that, my device receives a full certificate chain. So the leaf certificate, that chains to the issuing CA, which chains to the root CA, that scoped directly to my ADR namespace. And now my device is using that CA chain to actually connect to IoT Hub, where now it's able to send telemetry, such as the wind speed data that you see right here, as well as report device twin properties. So what I'm actually reporting here is my IoT device is reading the certificate properties of its leaf certificate, so things like its validity date, and then reporting that back to IoT Hub within its device twin properties.
So did you still need to create a CA here, a CA certificate, and upload that to DPS for this to work, or did that?
So in the step previous, we linked our policy to our DPS enrollment group. So now DPS knows exactly which policy this device coincides with, because it's onboarding onto that enrollment group. In addition to that, we synced our CA certificates with IoT Hub. So now this leaf certificate that I'm presenting, IoT Hub natively validates and verifies that certificate when the device aims to connect to it.
Okay, so but you needed that CA certificate in DPS for this to work.
You can still have a CA for, what we are doing, we are separating the credentials into two. Then you have an onboarding credential on DPS, and then you have the operational credential, which is this one that Seeam is talking about.
I see. So the
onboarding
CA for the IoT Hub connection is issued by Microsoft.
Exactly.
But your CA to connect to DPS, that's up to you.
That's up to you, exactly. And you can use certificate, as you highlighted, or you can use SAS keys. We've seen many customers today using SAS keys still because they cannot have their own PKI.
Yeah, we're kind of, you'd be investing back in your own problem, I guess, because you'd be having to manage your own PKI if you were going to create the CA for the DPS provisioning. Exactly. So SAS keys would be an easier solution.
Your onboarding, your onboarding pipeline should be SAS keys, and then you just issue a certificate from DPS.
See, security isn't my strong point generally. I mean, I know enough, and I've spent quite a long time looking at this recently. We'll provide a link to the stuff that I've looked at the end as well. And you can go very deep very quickly when you start looking at this, certainly when you're managing it yourself. And that's what I like about what you're doing, is that even at the level that I was looking at, it got complicated to a degree. So for individuals who don't have an enterprise level security team to go and rely on, having some measure of management offloading I like, because everyone should see how important security is. So to be able to then offload some of that complexity to services like this sounds like a good idea.
Yep, absolutely. So now going back to my resource group. So as I mentioned, my device was successfully provisioned to my IoT Hub and registered with an ADR. So here's what that looks like. So So right here in my resource group, I have one new resource actually within my resource group. It's that device that I actually just provisioned, Turbine Contoso Demo 001. And what's happening here is that this device is actually an ADR device, meaning it's an ARM resource within Azure. And the benefit here is that all of the management capabilities that you get with any ARM resource, such as, ARG, RBAC, tagging, now applies to IoT devices. So you can extend those capabilities now to your various IoT devices that are registered within ADR.
Nice. And I'm assuming that we can see those devices in ADR then when we go there.
You absolutely can. So right here under my ADR devices, boom, I have that one device that I just provisioned just now.
And again, you can build your own views also. Your own views with ARG queries. You can build some amazing reports to know how many devices you have onboarded, when, in which IoT Hub and whatnot. So
I like it. Yeah. I love it. It's weird because it's a small thing, seeing an ARM resource for a device, but as a person that's been using IoT Hub for a good long time and just used to the device registry, to see those pop up and as it makes it feel sort of more real in a way. I don't know, maybe it's just me being a big geek, but that leads you to understand the ability to be able to manage those devices in this different way and give you a lot more control over that we wouldn't have had before when they're now manifesting in part of ADR. So that's exciting to see.
Absolutely. Like, and there's one last part to this. So as I mentioned, my device was continuously sending telemetry to IoT Hub. And we actually take that data from IoT Hub and then send it over to Fabric where it can actually be analyzed, visualized. On top of that, I mentioned that the device is capturing the certificate properties as device twin properties. We also send that data to Fabric so you can do something like this.
That's done automatically, the capturing of the certificate properties in the device twin properties, or is that something you've got to do yourself? Or
yeah, so that pipeline is something that you set up connecting your IoT Hub to your Fabric workspace. Yeah. That is something that's supported today. It's super easy to do due to like different
routing.
Exactly.
Okay,
message routing. You can use tools like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and even the certificate, the information of the certificate today in this preview, we send it as part of the device twin properties.
Is that something you see if you were to go to the device in IoT Hub? Would you see those device twin properties?
You need to be intentionally sending that information right now.
Okay.
In some future, that property will live somewhere else.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Again, previews still.
Yeah. Shh. We'll have to edit things out of this if we're not careful.
So looking here at my Fabric workspace right now, I have that device that I just connected right now. So this is the telemetry that the device was actually sending to IoT Hub, which is now visualized in Fabric against these dozens of other devices that I've actually already created before. And then down below here, I'm actually sending the device twin properties of my IoT device to Fabric. So this is the device that I just provisioned.
Can you zoom in a bit? Can we see a bit more into that? Let's have a look. Yeah, I like it.
So Turbine Contoso Demo 001, I'm sending all of its device twin properties. So it says that my device is currently running, which it is. And then I send what is my favorite part, the certificate expiration date and the certificate issue date.
That part on its own has got to be super powerful.
This is so powerful because now IoT operators, management teams can maintain continuous governance or oversight of their device security postures. So devices should renew their certificates ideally before they actually expire, so you have zero downtime. But say there's a scenario where a device fails to actually renew its certificate, you're able to actually see that and monitor that from tools like Fabric right now. So that if you see something like that, then you know that something's going wrong. You can go do some sort of troubleshooting or debugging on that specific device.
I like it. And we're seeing part of that IT/OT story here as well, I guess, where we can now have a single pane of glass view, and I'm assuming it will go red.
Exactly. Yeah. So I actually have some devices that have stopped working right now.
Okay.
And then all of these have expired certificates right now.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And could you set some automation off of the back of this as well, or is that in the pipeline so that you could have this reach out on Teams to somebody perhaps? Or
Yep.
Exactly.
You can send notifications, alerts. Yeah. I mean, now you can exploit with AI all of this data.
Yeah.
So you can do anything. You can build agents to react on this data.
I like
or integrate with other parts of the data in your business, not only from these devices, but from the data from your revenue, from your costing pieces.
I like it.
Super powerful.
Yep. No, that is. I like that. I like this ability to be able to do this. And it reminds me of time series insights, stream analytics, and that sort of thing. But this is the modern way of doing it, essentially. And the data that you can pull into this and the insights that you can get off the back of it. And you're right, to be able to now embed AI off the back of this directly and open that world up as well is super powerful.
Absolutely.
No, I like it. That's good. So, I mean, I love all of this, and as you mentioned, this was announced at Ignite, and this is still being iterated on as we speak. Are you able to give us any hints as to the directionality of where we're going? Have we got some new services being worked on? I mean, what we can't do is talk about anything which is under NDA here, sadly. I'd love to be able to do that and just bring you all into this whole conversation. So I've got to be very careful how I try and drag the answers out of folks, but maybe from your personal opinion, how would you like to see the directionality would be a good way to frame this? And don't give me anything that's NDA, please, because I like being an MVP.
Exactly.
You probably like your job as well.
I like my job, and I want to keep paying my bills. So definitely won't share anything that is under NDA. But what we can say is what folks are seeing today in this demo, right? They saw ADR, they saw Azure Device Registry, which is a very powerful story. Now that we have this resource, and I remember the first time that I saw this Azure resource with the old, ARM logo as a resource, I was like, oh, this is amazing. That is already giving us some lead into how many more things we can do for managing devices. The very first one is certificate management, which we keep investing and improving, and you will see that soon. So you will be able to see how we are improving security and server management and all this story, but device management will be key for us within ADR. You will be able to see more and more capabilities to be able to manage IoT devices as you are typically used in any other Azure resource today. That's our direction, that is the strategy, and that's why we are doing this switch and this shift today into integrating ADR into this ecosystem. It's not only certificate management, this is the first one out of many that will come.
I mean, what I see from what you've shown, and it's funny that you say when you saw it appears, it mirrors when I see those devices appearing in there as ARM resources, it kind of mirrors this path that we're on here from these long-standing services that have been around, as I've mentioned earlier, the legacy, which hopefully you can get from these demos that these are not legacy services, these are actively developing services. But we see them moving more towards those newer services like ADR and IoT operations and that side of things. Is that something that you see as the direction that folks are going to be able to go in that you gave your example there of the single factory that's using IoT Hub out in the field, literally out in the field, then back in the warehouse they're using the newer services like IoT operations. Are you seeing that convergence, that singularity there in the future?
It's not only seeing, we are doing that. Let me be super clear there. And if you want to show that slide, that's where we are heading. We've got a slide for this. Because that's where we're heading. And you can read also all about it in our blog post. We have some public material where you can read about this strategy that we are heading towards. And basically, we are merging the two worlds within ADR, because the way we'll see ADR is a control plane. And if you want to move to the next slide, ADR was launched in AIO, so that was the very beginning. Now we are here. We are bringing ADR to be the control plane for all the devices, for all your IoT devices and assets into a single pane of glass. We shouldn't have to ask you to gain new expertise, new capabilities to manage on one place or the other. You want to manage IoT. That's ADR. That is your control plane, your management plane. Then you have in IoT Hub and in AIO, you have messaging pipelines, messaging planes for sending data into Azure, into the cloud. And then you have in Fabric, as we saw, a data plane, where you will be able to integrate data from IoT Hub, aggregate data from Azure IoT operations, and then you can make better decisions in Fabric, and use AI to do those decisions and those analytics to be able to kind of be more productive and more efficient. That's where we are heading. You can see, again, all these services. You have DPS there. You have Azure Device Update. They might work on only one side of the house because that's where they make sense, like DPS. DPS makes sense for IoT Hub directly connected devices. So you will be seeing all of these investments in the future.
I like it. That's great. It's interesting because I think maybe one of the first slides, it had several boxes, little rounded boxes like we've got on the screen here, and they were kind of separated. And what we see now on this slide is that you have one big rounded box, and everything is a first-party service in there, and everything is designed in a way that they're feeding the same way with the same mapping and the same domain, and everybody will be able to feed in from the different parts from those not legacy, original, traditional, long-standing services to outwards to things like IoT operations. So it's great to see that convergence, and that single way of being able to manage everything together is definitely looking like the future to me. I like it. So we're going to a convergence point here, and those traditional services, the IoT Hub, DPS-based services, and the IoT operations, really what we're talking about is just different ways to get data into that central point, and then we draw insights from that data. Now, we are living in a world of AI. That is where we're at. Is that part of the future, do we think, of where these services will drive?
Definitely, and that's why you see Fabric in our demos, right? I mean, Fabric is becoming a first-class citizen on DPS, Hub, and all these services. All the data, we don't want to land in Fabric just because of the sake of it. Fabric is being a huge investment to make better decisions and to do and run better AI in the cloud. Of course, you will want to have AI on the edge in natural IoT operations and whatnot, but also you want to make better decisions with all this data, huge amount of data that you have on the cloud. And you want to be able to be more intelligent about how to use that.
And this is traditional sort of analytical-based AI, so machine learning-based AI and anomaly detection and things like predictive maintenance, but also the reasoning, the conversational-based AI, which is the newer stuff that we're seeing, and being able to ask questions about your data and then bring out those insights in a human-readable way.
And not only that, you can also build agents on your data that can reason against, and they can notify you about certain things, as I was saying, sharing the example, right? You can now have an agent telling you, hey, I believe this robot is not working fine. I believe this field is not working properly. I believe this field is not working. So now, and it can suggest some decisions to make some actions. You can approve them or not, right? But now you are going into that direction with all these agents.
Yeah, agentic AI is going to be super powerful, certainly in this area as well. Oh, awesome. So with all of that said, we've talked about quite a lot here, and the demo's brilliant. I really love those, Seeam, so thank you for giving those as well. Have you got somewhere where folks who perhaps haven't looked at this before can go learn about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So our team has released a couple of different blog posts within tech community pertaining to these new capabilities that have launched across ADR, IoT Hub, device provisioning service. So highly recommend folks take a look at those. We also have a ton of great documentation when it comes to onboarding onto the actual platform. So actually getting your first device connected to these new capabilities that are in public preview. I think that's the best way to actually learn about these new services, is to really get your hands dirty into like the preview capabilities. That said, if you have feedback along the way, that brings me to my third point here. Please get in touch. Share any feedback you have. If you find any bugs, let us know. Your feedback is super valuable right now for these preview capabilities, so that we're able to shape these into the condition that we want and to really satisfy our customer needs here.
I like it. On top of this, by the way, I've mentioned that I've been playing with this. So my website, petecodes.co.uk, you can find some stuff on that DPS, a traditional DPS route, so without the IoT Hub cert management route. So I've done that, but connecting with a certificate. As I said, I wanted to go learn where these differences were, so I've written a series of blog posts on how to connect.
Which is great, by the way. I have one run through that, and it is great.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you. And that's some compliments, so make me smile and blush. But on top of that, then, I've released another set of posts on expanding on that traditional way of connected to DPS and then building in these new features. Now, what I can tell you is that it's awesome to be able to run through that. And certainly if you read the instructions properly, and then you message Seeam and he says you've not read the instructions properly, that's why it's not working. I noticed that a couple of times. So thank you so much. And I've got to give a big shout out because you've both been awesome. And it really does speak to that customer-centric experience that you were talking about earlier, in that when I had a problem, and most of them were my fault, it was great to be able to get that interaction. But we did find a couple of bits while we were doing this, and that is super important, in that you saw on the screen there, and you can go back, that email address, get in touch. I think most of the people on that product group are going to have access to that, you pair included. Yeah. So, either you've got requests, so different ways of managing these things, or you found something, by all means, do get in touch, and then you folks can get involved in that. One of the other things I want to mention is, of course, I run a few user groups, one of which is Not IoT. So you're watching IoTeaLive, which is sort of more conversational like this, but what we also have is Not IoT, where we bring along presenters and allow them to be able to deep dive into this. So is this something you'd be interested in coming along and speaking about?
I would love to, yes.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So look out for that in the future as well, and we'll start talking about deeper diving into some of this, more demos as well, which I always enjoy. So with that, we'll wrap up, and well, say thank you very much to Jesus. Thanks very much to Seeam. I loved all the demos. That information was fantastic, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for joining, folks.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you for having us, Peterson.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks very much for coming.